Thank you everyone for coming. We're going to talk about whether or not your client needs a prenup. And I know this is something that we don't usually come across. It was very enlightening for me to learn about. And so I was hoping that I could impart some of this info to you guys. So we'll learn about who obviously needs a prenup, why they need it, and what should go into the prenup. So let me ask you this first. What percentage of Americans say they support the idea of a prenup? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Wow. I see a couple of correct answers. It is 50%, but only 1 in 5 married couples actually have one, which is interesting. So we'll talk about the purpose, pros and cons, and what to put in there. What is the purpose? Well, think about, it's not romantic, obviously, but I always think of hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. The purpose of the prenup is, well, let's first talk about what prenup means. That's short for prenuptial agreement, and it's agreed upon by the couple prior to the marriage. Remember, you have to tell your clients anytime you're talking about this that it is not legal advice. None of what I'm saying is legal advice. I'm not an attorney. I don't know many AFCs or AFC candidates that are attorneys, so keep it within our scope. Just a reminder. So the prenup is a legal contract, and it outlines the division of assets, debts, and other financial matters in the event of divorce or death. So why should a prenup be put into place? Well, it allows couples to have control over their financial futures and protect their assets. That's huge. They want to protect their assets. It's a perfect #1 reason for having a prenup. Additionally, it can address potential conflicts and uncertainties and provides clarity and peace of mind for both parties. So let's also talk about community property. There are 9 states that have community property laws. Do you know what community property means? It's any assets that are acquired during the marriage are split equally. So that can make a significant difference. All of these that are coming up onto your screen right now, those are the 9 states that, of course, California's there. I live in California. California makes everything challenging. But if you have clients in any of these states, you'll want to talk to them about it and consider having a prenup. All right. So who needs a prenup? Anyone that argues over finances, which is, well, pretty much any couple, right? Anyone that has significant debt or is expecting to incur any debt through the course of the marriage. I think of student loans. If they own a business or might be inheriting one, if they have kids or plan to have them, or if one of the couple plans on staying home to have the kids or to take care of the kids and not work. If they already own real estate or know that they're going to be inheriting any real estate.
Yeah, you got
furry kids.
Step kids and people with family wealth listed in the chat too. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's me and my furry kid right there, Charlie girl. But, if you're planning on having furry kids together, you might want to put that in a prenup. So does anyone know what the divorce rate is? You can put that in the chat. Pretty much right on. It's right now it's 40 to 50%, and it got skewed a little bit because a lot of people got married during COVID. Although I know a lot of divorces came too, but so for a first marriage, the divorce rate is 40 to 50%. But for a second marriage, it's 60 to 67%. So if you think about most people that are having second and third marriages, they're going to be later in life and they will have a lot more assets already. And so a prenup would be a super good idea at that point. Again, that's something to think about when you talk to your clients. But again, it's not legal advice, right? So what are some pros other than the ones that I have already talked about? Can you guys tell me in the chat reasons for people to get a prenup? Yeah. A pre-pup for fur babies? Oh my God, that's hilarious. Protect wealth, protect assets. Yeah, that's a number one reason is asset protection. So you'll want to stress that to your clients. And this can include property, investments, businesses, inheritances, peace of mind. Yep, clarity and certainty. And so that's going to tell your spouse, and you will know that how your assets will be divided if there was a divorce. And this could potentially reduce conflict and legal expenses. Debt protection. So you're married, you come into the marriage and somebody has some huge student loans and then you divorce. You don't want to be responsible for having to pay for their student loans and you're not even with them anymore. And vice versa, you wouldn't want to put that on someone unless you really didn't like them, but that's a whole nother topic. Let's see, preserving family wealth. So, especially in the case of a second marriage, if there are step kids involved and you want to keep the family wealth within the family and not have it go to the now ex step kids, that's a great reason to have the prenup. And spousal support control. So this can be set up ahead of time as far as what the alimony amounts are and duration of payments. And this could help, again, reduce potential conflict in the event of a divorce. So what would you think the number one con would be? Con for getting a prenup? Nobody thinks there's any cons?
No, it shows lack of trust or upsetting the other person to ask for it, things like that. I see.
Unromantic perception. And it can show lack of trust and create tension and hurt feelings. And yeah, you're in la la land when you're about to get married. You don't want to talk about a divorce. It can also be super complex and expensive. As far as pricing, costs start for a prenup at least $3,000. So that's something to really think about because weddings are expensive. And then if you add that on top of it, that could be a major con. The potential conflict and fighting that could come with discussing this could really add, especially if one person is coming into the marriage with a lot of assets and the other one doesn't, there could be some unbalancing, and then enforceability challenges. So If it's deemed unfair, or if there's evidence of coercion or lack of full disclosure, that might get thrown out of court. And again, which is why somebody needs to have expert legal advice, which we don't give, right? And then future changes in circumstances could really turn the entire prenup upside down. Changes in financial status, birth of kids, all of those could render the prenup to be not liable. So, all right, marriage is a beautiful union, but again, it's a legal contract. So remind your clients that it's beautiful and it's adjoining a union and all the flowery blah, 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 but it's a legal contract. And it becomes a legal contract when you're going through a divorce and it gets ugly. Ask me how I know. So it can be really, it's devastating, but having a prenup in place can help take some of the burden, the emotional burden off of your clients. So how can you help your client before they meet with an attorney? Well, you can help them go through and look at the asset division. So if you help them clearly outline how their assets, while they're acquired during the marriage, how they would be divided, property, investments, businesses, anything valuable, then that could really, really take some burden off and maybe cost them less when they go to the attorney. Debt responsibility. Again, I always think of student loans, but maybe somebody has credit card debt. Maybe they have big real estate loans, but this can be something that can be listed. You can go through it with your client. And then the alimony and spousal support, that's kind of sticky. I feel like that one is more suited to if it actually is happening, the divorce is happening. But again, you could get an idea. And then let's see, what else? Inheritance rights. Well, we touched upon that a little bit, especially if there are stepkids and there's going to be inheritance. You're getting, I don't know, a house from your parents, and you want to make sure that it goes down to your kids and not your stepkids. And future earnings is another one. You can help your clients consider whether or not potential income from businesses or investments should be included in the marital estate prior to being divided. Custody and child support of children. Now, this is a family court. You can't decide who gets custody, but it can be discussed. And again, this is something you're just going to be helping your clients, because you can't put anything that's going to be legal down on paper. You're just helping them get their ideas going. Pets need to decide whether or not who's going to get custody of the pets and how the expenses are going to be paid for. Dispute resolution includes provisions on how disputes regarding the prenup will be resolved, and whether or not it'll go through mediation or arbitration. Financial responsibility. So some couples combine all of their money together. Some choose to have separate accounts and then maybe have a joint account. It's just helping them talk about this prior to getting married might actually strengthen the marriage. Getting all this ugly stuff out of the way to begin with is actually really helpful for them. And then finally, miscellaneous, the all-important miscellaneous. And this just addresses anything else that the couple might feel is important and specific to their situation. So now what? As financial counselors, we need to give our clients the best information that we can, and that includes referrals to other professionals, especially in this instance where it needs to be legally drawn up. Whether or not your clients feel a prenup is beneficial, it depends on their circumstances and the priorities of that couple. It is important for the couples to discuss their expectations and concerns and goals openly and honestly before deciding to create a prenup. And they could also consult with separate legal counsel so they feel like it's fair, just so that they're fully understanding the implications. And really, if they are talking about this prior to getting married, it might actually help them. Gosh, you might even be able to weed out, like decide, oh, I don't think we can get married because we have such differing mindsets on how finances are going to be handled, and save people a lot of heartache and money in the long run. Let's see, I already talked about the average prenup cost starts at around 3,000. Do you guys know how much the average divorce costs? This is just average. You can put it in the chat. Your mom paid $99. $99. Wow. The average divorce costs 15,000. And so you can just ask your clients, would they rather pay an average of 3,000 to 4,000 ahead of time for a prenup, or do they have the money to fork out 15,000 down the road? And I know it's not romantic. So anyways, it's something that could be really beneficial. And looking back, I personally would have liked to have known this kind of information, and think it could have saved me a lot of money and heartache down the road. So that's it. I'm Suzanne Reitz. If you have any questions, there's my info. I will find my Instagram handle when I'll turn my phone back on and find it. And so does anyone have any questions? Should I look in the chat? It's hard to do this and look at the chat at the same time.
No, that's the fun part. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's see. In a community property state where one person gets stock options as part of their job, are the stock options part of the community property?
It can be, yes.
Yeah. And it can
But
be not.
yeah, and that's the thing too, is that while all of the things that I mentioned, it being community property 50-50, your clients, when they are actually going through a divorce proceeding, they can negotiate. The attorneys negotiate, okay, well, you can keep all of your stock options, but I'm going to get such and such in return. And it's just a really expensive, stupid game that the attorneys are the ones that win. So if your clients have a prenup going into this, it can really reduce a lot of the back and forth where the attorneys are sending their kids to private school from all of your money. I'm not bitter at all.
Hey, Suzanne,
Yeah,
those stock options, only those that were received during the marriage can be split, right? Anything that they earned prior to cannot be touched?
that would go to an attorney. I couldn't answer that.
Gotcha, thanks.
Yeah, there are cases that people get that because it was part of what they thought they were coming into.
Right. Retirement. There's vehicles, everything gets split. And then it's like in the case of if you own a house together, well, if you want to keep that house, you have to buy out the other spouse. And if you don't have that money, then the house gets sold. So there's a lot that goes to it. And this is basically, it's just protection for your clients and something to help them get the conversation started with their future spouse. Even if they don't end up getting a prenup, these are great talking points for them to bring up because it could really raise some red flags. And can a prenup be revoked? It could, but that would have to be done in court, and a judge would have to deem it as
Dismissed. Yeah.
yes, and something that was like coerced, or it would be an expensive thing to get revoked. Yeah,
What does changing a prenup while still married look like?
that's a good question. Um,
'Cause I know we
it,
talked about you can get a postnup, right? We talked about
yeah,
that.
yeah, you can get a postnup, but changing a prenup would cost more money again, and I would think it would have to be a pretty significant change in circumstances to want to put forth all of that money for legal reasons. But it can, just like you update your will and your trust and your estate. This is all part of it, and it's all for protection. The stocks vest over time, so the spouse could ask to get paid out on even future vesting stocks. Yes, absolutely.
And one of the things I know we talked about when we were going through this too was the fact that a lot of people don't talk about spousal IRAs, and you could have that laid out in there that, hey, especially if somebody's going to stay home with kids or not work as much, that you have something set up in your prenup that is going to be part of your retirement planning. That could be a really valuable thing to do for somebody who's,
Oh, absolutely. Because if they're not out there in the working world able to earn their own money, if they were to get a divorce, they could really end up losing really poorly. I mean, it could be bad. You have no work experience, nothing in the bank. And so, Becky,
I just wanted to say you did a really good job talking about like the things having to be right, because I know people who've gotten prenups and one of the spouses is an active duty military member. And when they get divorced, the prenup says, you can't touch my pension,
uh,
but they aren't allowed to say that in the prenup. The judge gets to decide that. So even though it was in a prenup, it was deemed to be like invalid basically.
wow.
And so it gave them a false sense of security that their spouse wasn't going to have access to those retirement funds, when in reality that was decided to not be the case and they got a cut of it.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing too, is that divorce, it can go awry really quickly, even if you have things in writing. But at least having it, there is some layer of protection that can be negotiated and fought about. And that's what it is. It's all fighting. Nobody knows anyone that's gone through a divorce where it's been amicable. I don't know whoever made that up, because that does not exist. And what did Jen say? Can they just write up on a piece of paper and have it notarized as a prenup? No. You need to go tell your clients to go to an attorney, a family law attorney. And so that's part of us as financial counselors. We need to have good referrals for that. Give them like 3 choices. Have a great will and estate plan. Yeah, that's part of it. That will be part of the whole overall financial plan. Okay,
lots of
we
good
good?
questions. Lots of
Stop
good
sharing.
discussion in there too. One of the things that I liked is, of course, having Amy, our HR person, in here. And she said that, you may be able to use your HR benefits to work towards something like that. So anything you
Mm,
can share on
that's a
that?
good point. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone.